Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we are so glad to have you here. Coming up, when you hear the word politics, what comes to mind? Pollster Patrick Murray of Monmouth University Polling Institute asked voters, and we'll tell you what they had to say about the way business is done here in New Jersey and in Washington, D.C. He's standing by. First up, though, we're going to talk about the cost of doing legal business here in the state. Some recent reports rank New Jersey as one of the most expensive when it comes to our civil justice system. So let's get to it. Some are criticizing New Jersey's civil justice system for being one of the most expensive in the country. That criticism is heating up thanks to reports from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute for Legal Reform and Americans for Tort Reform Association. Joining me now to give us some insight is Anthony Anastasio. He is the president of the New Jersey Civil Justice Institute. Anthony, it's good to see you. Can you talk a little bit about what people should know about the cost of New Jersey's civil justice system?
Sure. To put it in perspective, the American civil justice system is one of the costliest in the world. And in 2020, New Jersey was found to be fourth in the nation for tort costs. The numbers were $5,059 per household, or 2.68% of GDP. And this takes into account the cost of litigation, the compensation that's paid to injured parties, the amounts that businesses and individuals pay to transfer risk. And it's based on insurance data collected and analyzed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. It includes all sorts of claims against businesses, including personal injury, consumer and employment claims. It also includes auto and medical liability claims.
Right. So what role does the legal system then have in making New Jersey an expensive place not only to live, but to do business?
So, our state's public policies often favor private lawsuits as a way to resolve society's problems. Certain policies favor plaintiffs, which are the individuals bringing claims. And those policies include allowing them to recover their attorney's fees and seek enhanced damages. You see this a lot in consumer protection and employment claims. The problem with that imbalance is it creates an economic incentive for lawyers to pursue lawsuits, and more lawsuits will drive up operating costs for businesses and local governments that are forced to settle and defend the claims. So, of course, those costs are ultimately going to be passed on to citizens in the form of higher prices for goods and services and higher taxes.
Yeah. Is that there's a term lawsuit abuse? Can you define that? Is that what is lawsuit abuse, and what kind of cost does this have for business and consumers?
I say the best way to define it would be taking advantage of ambiguities in the law and lax legal procedures in order to force settlement of questionable claims. Whenever you have legal uncertainty, it makes it harder for businesses to predict their financial exposure to claims, which impacts their bottom line. And of course, that impact is going to be passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices and workers in the form of lower wages.
Yeah, and everything right now is so incredibly expensive. What is it that you do, and what is it that you're advocating for or you're hoping can be addressed?
Our organization is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that seeks to advocate for rules and regulations, laws that make it a friendlier environment for a business. So, basically, we're looking for predictability in the law. We're looking for clarity in the law. That way, businesses don't have uncertainty as to their financial exposure to legal claims, and they can operate more profitably and have lower prices for consumers and higher wages for workers.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of issues in New Jersey's judicial system. What seems to be grabbing most of the headlines right now is the lack of judges. But this necessarily, this is not getting much attention. So when you see these issues and the cost of what it is to conduct business, are you working with the legislature to try and enact any change? And where is this ranking on the list of priorities?
Obviously, for us, it's the top of our priority list.
Right. Yes.
I think the type of things that we advocate for in furtherance of our mission, would be to make adjustments to legal procedures to reduce the cost of litigation. For example, the cost of discovery in civil lawsuits is extremely high. The federal courts have taken steps to rein those costs in. I think New Jersey should too. We advocate for limits on non-economic damages for things like pain and suffering, which can be extremely difficult for juries to quantify, leading to these runaway verdicts. We want to make sure judges are effective gatekeepers of expert evidence and keep junk science out of the courtroom. We advocate for preserving the right of arbitration, which is a private forum for resolving disputes. Disputes can be resolved faster and cheaper outside of the court system. So those are the types of things that we advocate for. And we get a mixed reception in the legislature, but ultimately, these are the things that we think will work to reduce costs in the system and make it a friendlier environment for business.
Yeah, I remember a time when I was first starting out as a reporter that tort reform, that was getting the attention of the state legislature, and they moved when it was coming to medical lawsuits, and they did take action, but that's going back 25 years or so. It doesn't seem like it's been a legislative priority. I'm not hearing anybody talking about it. So how do you plan on getting it on their radar so that they will take action?
We hope that these reports, with respect to the increased cost associated with the system, will get their attention. I mean, as you said before, inflation is impacting everyone right now, and anywhere where we can potentially reduce costs, goods and services, I think should be a welcome policy change for our legislature.
Yeah, yeah. And there was something that the Chamber of Commerce report addressed also. It talked about nuclear verdicts. Again, so if we're starting to hear about this and starting to learn, getting people used to the vernacular, what's a nuclear verdict and what kind of impact does it have?
The way they define a nuclear verdict is a verdict of $10 million or more. New Jersey is eighth in the nation for the number of nuclear verdicts from the time period of 2010 to 2019. This hooks into the kind of broader tort cost question that we discussed earlier. I mean, these outside verdicts increase the cost of business. They require insurance carriers and companies to put a lot more money in reserves to protect against an increased risk of legal exposure. And of course, that's going to put downward pressure on profits and wages and upward pressure on prices.
Yeah. This might seem like a basic question, but why? Why is there such an issue? Somebody's going to court. They don't want to spend all their time with lawyers, and that they want to get a quick resolution. Why are we here?
I think, like I said earlier, I mean, we have policies in this state which tend to favor private litigation as a way to solve problems. So ultimately, when you have those policies in place, you're going to have more litigation. You're going to have bigger verdicts. You're going to have increased costs associated with it. So, I mean, it's all kind of a common thread runs through all of these issues. When you incentivize litigation, you're going to increase cost, and ultimately, cost has to be recouped somewhere, and it's going to be passed on to consumers and workers.
Yeah. How hopeful are you that lawmakers are going to take action on these points?
I try to stay positive, but
Yeah.
it's they have a lot on their plate. So I'm one of many issues they have to deal with, and I hope that they take this stuff seriously. As I said, it is a increased cost for consumers and workers, and I think ultimately it's something that they should take seriously.
Okay, Anthony Anastasio, but thank you so much for coming on to talk to us about this. It's good seeing you.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely. A new poll from Monmouth University finds that the public has low trust in the state government. Only 32% rated their trust as good, with only 4% rating it as excellent. Joining me now to talk about this and more is Patrick Murray, director of Monmouth University Polling Institute. Patrick, it's good to see you.
Good to be with you, Laura.
All right, so let's just talk a bit about the headline of this poll is Dirty Business. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, really, we look at the quality of government, and every once in a while we check in on how people feel things are going. And a question that we ask is, getting involved in politics, do you think that's a dirty business, or is that an honorable thing to do? And if we go back a decade or so ago, a majority clearly said it was an honorable thing to do. There were certainly a number of people who said it was a dirty business, about a third back then. But today, that number is basically even. 44% say it's an honorable thing to do, but 44% say it's a dirty business. That number has crept up. And it goes along with other things that we're seeing in terms of faith in the quality of government, which is low. It's low for Washington. It's low for Trenton. Trenton gets a little better of a score there, but not by much. And I think it's because we see people turning their backs, particularly younger adults, kind of the millennial adults, Gen Z adults now coming of age, who are saying that I don't like politics, but there are other ways that I can get involved in my community and make the world around me better. But it's not going to be via politics.
Yeah. So, what do you think is at the core? Is it the fact that we're exposed and we have 24/7 access to watching? They say two things you don't want to watch being made: laws and sausage, right? So, is part of the issue people are seeing more because it's available 24/7 on so many news stations, or has something shifted in what politicians are doing that has caused people, to think this way?
Well, our politics have certainly become more bifurcated on a partisan line. We have this partisan tribalism that we talk about, where Republicans and Democrats just can't see eye to eye on anything and tend to demonize each other in their respective, media buckets there that they participate in. And I think part of it is not so much that politics is there all the time; it's just the tone of the politics and what we're getting from that. On top of it, it seems that there's a concerted effort that the best way to win in politics is to make sure the government doesn't work, and I think that has a lot to do with it right now. I mean, when we look at again the ratings for the quality of government in Trenton, that's about a third give it a positive rating. Less than 1 in 5 give a positive rating to the quality of government in Washington D.C. That that we were talking about people who are looking at government and say it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the people who are involved in government are out there just fighting with each other and not thinking about compromise, and therefore politics must be a dirty business. Everything that I see about it just is not getting anything done. Is just throwing, grenades at each other.
Yeah. So, when you look at the implications, any implications for New Jersey? This is an election year, the legislature. Any implications for the state elections coming up in this poll?
Well, I think it's a pox on both your houses. So what happens here is that the people who come out to vote, particularly in a legislative election, are those that already have a rooting interest in one side winning over the other. And this is, we always talk about turnout. The question is turnout, is that we have far fewer undecided voters, independent voters today than we ever did, even though most voters call themselves independent here in New Jersey. When you get down to it, if they're actually active in politics, they are pretty much consistent Democrats or Republicans. And so in legislative elections, there's not much that you can do about persuasion, about telling people that government can work, is that you're going to get more messages that try to get your group of folks who support you out to vote and get the other folks to stay home. And that means we'll see more nasty messages, more political dirt, and more of this kind of information, political information that feeds that sense that politics is a dirty business.
Yeah, so I mean, it seems that to a certain degree, media almost has a responsibility to step up. Like, media has a choice; they can continue to participate in it, or step up and hold people accountable for what they're doing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
and the media's role in this.
Yeah, I think so. I think we see it in a lot of different ways. And I'll just give you an example of a story that came up recently: the whales beaching on New Jersey, and the idea that it might have something to do with exploration for wind farms there. But that was a political thing, and the media just reported it because it was a sensational story, without looking into, well, who's behind pushing that story. Turns out it was a political story. It was a political group that's behind pushing this. There's a long-term trend about that. But the media, what I'm saying is that was just an example that just happened recently, where the media has a role of not just jumping, hey, this is a sensational story, we'll flash it across the news, it's controversial, of looking behind that story first and saying, well, what's the reason behind the story? Oh, somebody is literally trying to stir the pot. That's the point. And that's what the story should have been about. Because if you don't tell people that people are trying to stir the pot, you're participating in stirring the pot.
Right, and part of that, well, what do you think? Part of that's just being lazy.
Well, part of it's being lazy.
Part of it is, and then push it out.
And part of it is that our local media has been gutted here, and not just in New Jersey. This is across the country, and so you don't have the folks out there who would go out there and say, "Hey, let's take some time to vet this story a little bit." Also, remember in the old days, a story would go out on a deadline, either the 6 o'clock news if it was airtime, or the next day's newspaper, which would give you time to sit on it. Now the story has to go out 10 minutes on the internet. And so there's not a lot of vetting to do. There's not a lot of editorial. And again, the idea conflict sells. So if this is what politicians are engaged in, is just name calling and flame throwing, and the media report it, it gets more clicks than if you have, a more kind of low key kind of this is actually what's going on behind the scenes kind of article. So yeah, there's problems all around on this.
Yeah, but the long-term implications also of those deciding with that follow-up question about, would you like to get involved? Well, yeah, I would, but I'm not going to run for office. Do you
Right.
feel optimistic, pessimistic after hearing this, or what are your thoughts
I actually
there?
I feel optimistic because I think the sense that our political dialogue is going downhill is probably irretrievable in the near future. I just don't see a way out of it. But what I do see is younger adults turning around saying, we're going to figure out something new. We're going to come out with a new dynamic. And it's going to get messy over time. But I think these folks are saying, we want to make a positive change and we'll start making that change. And I think eventually politics will have to follow because that's where these folks are pushing it. And as more of them come into the adult population and start becoming more active in their communities, I think we'll see a lot more of that.
Patrick Murray, thank you so much for taking the time to come on to share these insights. And we always love having you on and look forward to seeing you back once again.
Anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you. Charter schools are an important part of education in New Jersey, and joining me now to talk more about them is TJ Best. He's a senior advisor with the New Jersey Public Charter Schools Association. TJ, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you as well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's just talk a little bit about the need. Why do you feel it's important to advocate for public charter schools? The state supposedly has some of the best schools in the country. Why do we need public charter schools?
Well, even though the state has the best public schools in the nation, it's not evenly distributed throughout all of the municipalities. There are over 600 school districts in the state of New Jersey, and many of which don't serve all of the kids equally. In some of our poorest cities, we find a huge disparity between the students who are being served there. And charter schools are part of the solution. It's not the whole solution. But it definitely gives parents the opportunity to send their kids to an educational environment that they feel that it would be most successful in. So it's really up to the parents to decide whether or not they feel that their children will benefit from a different academic setting. And that's what charter schools do.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about when you have a public charter school, what is it that they're able to do? What is it they hope to achieve that perhaps the public schools aren't able to?
So our charter schools, for the most part, meet the students and the families where they are. They're normally a lot smaller than some of the larger school districts and are able to cater the education around the needs of the child and the needs of the family. We also have the ability to, try different things. It's a breeding ground for innovation where we're more smaller and nimbler to make changes where we see that if a student will benefit from a specific type of curriculum or a strategy, we're able to easily go in there and give that to the kid and the family and hopefully see those positive outcomes, which we are seeing in many of our schools.
Yeah, and you have there are 11 high-performing charter schools in New Jersey, and now they're getting some money to expand. So can you talk a little bit about, the need and also, how big are they looking to expand and the communities and so forth where they're looking to grow?
So currently in New Jersey, we have a little over 60,000 charter schools in 40 different cities. Making up 85 unique schools. Many of those schools have substantial waiting lists. We have over 28,000 students that are currently on those waiting lists. So they're achieving for kids, they're achieving for parents, but we need the Department of Education and the administration to agree to allow our schools to expand to accommodate all of those students that are on those waiting lists. In a recent decision by the Commissioner of Education and the Governor's Office, we were successful getting expansions in many of our schools. And we're thankful for that partnership with the administration for seeing that these schools are serving these students and these families and allowing them to grow.
Yeah, can you talk about it? Just you're a parent yourself and someone in education. Can you talk about just the needs that you see I myself have been a parent who has desperately looked for a school that's a right fit, and parents will move heaven and earth to ensure their child has what they need to meet their potential. And sometimes if there isn't space, it's very difficult. So can you talk a little bit about your experience also as a parent and what you see?
Yeah, so I'm a lifelong resident of Paterson, New Jersey, and my wife and I both grew up there. My wife and I are both educators. And for our two children, my daughter, who attends traditional public school, it fit great. She was able to get into a great gifted program in the city of Paterson, and she loved it. She was a very outgoing personality. My son is a little bit more introverted, and he needed an educational setting that, was smaller, where there was a little bit more time on task. And we found a great charter school to suit his needs. So myself, like many other New Jersey families, find that we have, because of school choice, the ability to send our kids to both charter school and traditional public schools. And that's a great option we have here in Jersey. And we really feel that it's important for all families to be able to make that decision for the best interest of their kid.
Well, can you talk a little bit about school choice? Do you feel that there is enough opportunity? Because not every district is a choice, that they have that choice. Can you talk a little bit about that particular divide or lack thereof?
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate. The way New Jersey designs education is you're really stuck to your neighborhood school. So if you happen to live in a poorer city, in a poorer neighborhood, then chances are that you're going to attend a school in a school district that really doesn't have all of the same bells and whistles as your neighbors in some of the other suburban towns. So by having school choice, you're able to really figure out what is the unique needs of your child and find a school, even if it's not your neighborhood school, if it's across town or maybe next door in another town, to really provide the needs that your child has. So, we do have school choice in New Jersey. I think that it could be a little bit more. We have great applications that come in every single year that the Department of Education evaluates to determine whether or not they want to allow this school provider to operate in these districts. So again, we're hopeful that working with this administration, we're able to get even more school choice. And it's something that we're looking forward to in the future.
Can you talk about when you have a charter school, one that's developed or one that's starting, how does that impact the public school? Some might say, well, you're taking away resources from the public school. Others might argue well, you're making the public school up its game and making them rise to a higher level. So what are your thoughts on that? When a charter school comes, what's the ripple effect in the community?
Yeah, I kind of like the analogy you used about the traditional public school up in their game. We do see that a rising tide raises all ships, and it's something that we like to use. If you look at the city of Newark, for example, which is the largest sector of charter school students that we have in the state, also the largest public school system that we have in the state as well. Across the board, since our charters have grown, we've seen tremendous growth in terms of proficiency on standardized tests, as well as college acceptance rates for both the charter schools and the traditional public schools. So I think having that option to go to either public or traditional public schools or public charter schools is really great for the parents. And it really also helps to take some of the stress and strain off of some of these school districts as well. We noticed that there is increased population growth in some of our urban sectors. And the school building hasn't really kept up to pace. So in a place like Paterson or Plainfield, charter schools have really helped out the local school district by taking away some of the overcrowding that's happening in those schools.
Yeah, and finally, if there's a community and there are parents who are saying, we really want to get a charter school here, we don't have it, whether it be urban, rural, suburban, do you help with do you go out there and help resources? Where can people go to not just find charter schools, but if they say, hey, there's an area here where we could really use the resources, how would they go about getting started?
Great. So thanks for that. The New Jersey Public Charter Schools Association is a membership or organization. We support all of our schools, as well as individuals and entities that are looking to open up schools in these cities. So we welcome them to, seek us out, and we would try any way we can to help them out. We've been successful recently in helping a school in both Patterson and Jersey City recently open, and we're hopeful to get more great applications that we could present to the governor's office.
Yeah, well, that's a good problem to have. A lot of interest, right?
Definitely.
Having parents care about, I think parents, the one thing the pandemic has gotten a lot of people way more involved in education and questioning the quality and making sure that their kids are on the right path so that they do, when graduation comes, they have choices.
What we've seen from this pandemic is that everybody in the state took a little dip, but we feel in the charter community that we're uniquely positioned to really see some substantial growth over the course of the next couple of years. The intense focus on rigor, as well as supporting the entire child and the entire family, really is going to set us apart. And we're going to see some great growth from our charter school sector in this next coming year, coming back from COVID.
TJ, we thank you so much for coming on and talking to us and explaining a little bit more about the charter schools and where they are in New Jersey. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. And that'll do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thank you so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.